to formally thank everybody for spending part of their afternoon with us. My name is Dr. April Willis, and I am the founder of the National Nonprofit Collaborative. We offer these webinars that are member-only exclusive webinars about every other month. I think we are going to be increasing it, though, to every month due to popular demand. We are so excited to hear that you all are watching these and you're getting a lot out of it. And I also want to recognize everybody who is watching after the live webinar, which is a-okay. We record these and put them in the resource library for you so you can have access to it, go back to it and watch it on your own time. I am going to share screen for a little bit and then I'm going to take it down so that we can you'll be able to see me better. I know the print on some of, or the font on some of these are a little smaller than usual, but it is because I want it to be a very helpful tool for you afterwards. So I tried to put a little bit more detail in each of these slides so that you could use it like a blueprint moving forward. But I also know some people just need visuals, and so I want to make sure that's available to you as well. We're going to be talking about how to maximize potential with a limited staff. We know nonprofits, especially your small to medium-sized nonprofits, tend to have a lot on their plates. Your staff, they're wearing a lot of hats. There is definitely a greater need than sometimes we have the capacity to support. So how do you do that? And how do you do that and avoid burnout at the same time, or avoid having your volunteers feeling like this is not what I signed up for, you're giving me way too much? We want to make sure that those are some of the points that we're talking about today. I also want you to know that one of my driving factors when designing these webinars for everybody in the collaborative is that this is not simply thought leadership. I do not want this to just be talking about theory and best practices. Instead, I want it to be, what can you turn around and implement as soon as this webinar is over? And so my goal is, through some of the strategies we talked through today, which I know everything won't be applicable to you because we're in different phases in the nonprofit journey. Some of us are much further along than others, or have much bigger budgets than others, or even larger teams than others. So you might hear something and be like, I've been there, done that, or I'm not even close to being ready to do that yet. That's okay. I don't expect every strategy to work for you, but my goal was to come up with enough variation in the strategy that you can find something to work with you. So let's talk about this objective side of things. I want to make sure, one, that we were just talking about, I'm equipping you with practical strategies. Two, I want to enhance your operational efficiency. I want to make sure that what we're talking about today is streamlining your operations so that you can achieve more using less. That's the goal. And then finally, we want to foster sustainable growth and impact. So you'll notice some of the strategies towards the end is, great, you've got a team, you have a mission, you've got some impact measures. How do you sustain that? And how do you then scale it? So that's what we're going to be looking at today. Let's talk about the importance of really understanding the landscape of nonprofits and why it's so important for us to be able to do more with a limited staff. The nonprofit landscape has taken a bit of a dive post-COVID, and a lot of you might have been feeling that. What that looks like is you now have more organizations, because I don't know if you knew this or not, but nonprofit being established took it skyrocketed during COVID. It was, everybody was wanting to help those around them, help those in need. They had a lot more free time on their hands. They weren't working as much. And what did they decide to do? Start a nonprofit. And there really are no rules or regulations to starting a nonprofit besides filing to be a nonprofit, creating a board, and having a board agenda that says that we voted on things and now we're officially a nonprofit. Here are our bylaws. So because there are no real barriers to entry, a lot of people decided to start it. What we're also seeing, though, is lots of them are starting to sunset. That means they're starting to dissolve their nonprofits. They realize they just didn't quite have what it takes to be successful in the nonprofit world. And part of that is not really understanding this nonprofit landscape. And so one of the things that we want to make sure that you really get out of that is that we are facing increased challenges around limited funding, staffing shortages, increased demand for services. So now it's going to become even more important for us to not just survive, but actually expand our reach so that you have a greater impact in your mission. The fact that you're simply still here says a lot about the dedication that you have, but also the importance of the nonprofit that you are running. Because, like I said, so many of them are not working anymore. The next part is the reality of resource constraints. That's another thing that we had in that little quadrant that I was showing you guys of the 4 things that we really need to understand to be able to speak to increasing capacity and effectiveness of your staff. So what we know is that oftentimes these nonprofits, you are operating with minimal staff, you're relying heavily on volunteers, part-time workers, contractors even. And what happens when you do that? You do start to lead to burnout. You also have a lot of inefficiencies. I actually work with a lot of nonprofits right now. The inefficiencies that I'm observing almost as an outsider is just really mind blowing because you see that you've got 18 different volunteers, you've got 30 different part time people, but you have 9 of them assigned to social media and communications. That's overkill. And what's happening is people are dropping the ball. People thought, well, I thought this person's working on it. You wanted me to work on it? That wasn't very clear. I don't know who to go to if I have a problem. So I'd rather just not say I have a problem and hope it gets figured out. Those types of inefficiencies can really be detrimental to an organization. So if you start to feel that we've got too many cooks in the kitchen, people aren't very clear about what they're doing, there has been no guidance or training or upskilling to get somebody ready, even if you brought them up within the organization, or hey, this volunteer has been around forever, they know how things are. Let's not make the assumption that people know how things are. And also, just because we've always done it a certain way doesn't mean we should continue doing it that same way. So we want to make sure that we are evaluating processes and systems and that we are training people to use them. Some of the points that I'm going to make to you today, some of the strategies I'm going to share with you today, they really do depend on buy-in, and you can only get adequate buy-in if you've put people through adequate training. If they don't understand the why behind it and they don't understand how it fits into the bigger picture, they're significantly less likely to utilize or employ or apply any of the strategies that we talk through today. So another thing I wanted to bring up though is seizing opportunities in a competitive environment. So as we talked about, being in the nonprofit space is very competitive. There are nearly 2 million nonprofit organizations across the country. Did you know that? That's a huge number of nonprofit organizations. And guess what? They're all vying for the exact same resources. They're asking the same people for money. They're asking the same community members to volunteer. They're asking the same people to serve on the board. You also have oftentimes cannibalization of those resources when similar organizations exist in the same community. So when you have multiple organizations in the community that are all providing, for example, performing arts for special needs populations, all of a sudden you've made it more difficult to raise money because rather than be in a partnership where an existing organization was already serving that population, now you've come in and you are asking the same people in that community to fund the work that you're doing when those people might already be funding the existing organization or might now take money away from them to give to you. So it's you kind of put yourself in a precarious situation if you were a newer nonprofit and you happen to engage in nonprofit work that already existed in your area. Doesn't mean you shouldn't exist. Sometimes the need is so great, they need multiple organizations. But one of the things we're going to talk through today is if that is a situation that you're in, let's look at partnerships because that's really going to help the resource constraints be mitigated just a little bit. And then the fourth thing that I wanted to talk through when we really understand this whole picture is building resilience and adaptability. We know, especially having this post-COVID talk, that there are constantly new challenges, but there are also new opportunities. And it's very important that we take this kind of a positive lens across, we recognize this has happened, or we recognize this is happening. And now we also see, because of that, some new opportunities have existed. One of the best examples I can give of this is I have an organization that's in the education landscape that I support, and they were getting the bulk of their funding ESSER funds. If you've heard of ESSER funds in the education world, this is when the government said, hey, we've got a lot of money that we'll be able to give post-COVID to help schools get back on their feet. Well, my client was able to be the recipient of that, but now all of that money is going away. We're talking about millions and millions and millions of dollars from school districts all across the country. When that money goes away, they now have to figure out, how do we not find ourselves in the hole? How are we going to acquire new clients that have new sources of funding? It doesn't mean we have to shut down and we're done for. It means we need to get creative about how do we tap into new opportunities. So being resilient and being adaptable. So part of what I plan to do in the rest of this webinar with you is to highlight the importance of fostering this culture of innovation and continuous improvement so that you can continue to navigate uncertainties and then emerge from them even stronger. It's important for us to continuously apply the continuous improvement process. I know it's like, well, of course, continuously apply it. But what we oftentimes see are people get so gung-ho right at the beginning, and they're like, okay, I cannot wait to learn what we can do better. We're going to do these root cause analysis and needs assessments and focus groups and forums and panels, and we're going to do all this stuff and figure out what we can do better. SWOT, sign me up. Strategic planning, absolutely. They get really excited about all of it. They do most of it. Oftentimes I see they don't do anything all the way through correctly or with fidelity. They pick and choose what works for them. And then they're like, yeah, it looks like there's a lot of work to be done. And all of that gets moved to the side. We don't look at it anymore. People go forward because they constantly feel like we're putting out fires, or an opportunity just presented itself. I better make myself available. And you start to lose strategy when that happens. And when you lose the strategy behind the work that you're doing, it makes it significantly harder to lead other people on your team. And if you are the executive director or the president or the board chair on this call right now, you start to think about, people are looking to you for direction. So if you make yourself unavailable to them, or you start to prioritize things simply because they seem like they might be important in the moment, but you're not taking into consideration the bigger picture, you're making it much more difficult for the people on your team to also feel like they are working efficiently, effectively, and optimizing their skills and their talents. So we want to make sure that whatever we're doing falls into a bigger strategic plan. It's also really easy to dismiss the idea of a strategic plan because it sounds so theoretical. It sounds like good practice, but it's not really something people refer back to. And that's a mistake. You should be referring back to it. It exists because it works. And we also understand that strategic plans are oftentimes living, breathing documents. This means that it is not something that's written in stone. It is okay to have mid-course corrections as long as they are strategic. We don't want them to be impulsive. We don't want them to be like, oh my gosh, everything feels like it's like there's a fire. Everything's always a fire. We don't want that. Instead, we recognize, okay, things aren't going the way that we thought they were going. Here's why. This was out of our control. This is what we can control, and this is how we're going to control it. So all of that said, let's jump in to the first real strategic move we're going to talk about when it comes to optimizing the talent that you have on your team. It is around effective resource management. Effective resource management means that we are prioritizing tasks and projects. We're also utilizing technology and tools. So I want you to conduct regular reviews of ongoing and upcoming projects, and you determine the priority based on the impact and how it is aligned with the organizational goals. So step one, if you are taking notes, is we want you to conduct a regular review of ongoing and upcoming projects and then put them in priority order. I would love for you to be able to do this with a team, because sometimes, even as an executive director, if you are at a mid-range or medium level nonprofit, you might not even know all of the projects that your team has going on. People build relationships with different stakeholders. They might be working on side projects. They might recognize a need and think it'd be really great for somebody to respond to it. And if you don't ask the right questions, or you don't really have those touch points with your team, you could miss some of these opportunities as well. So get together as a group, ask for a list of what everybody's working on, and then start to rank order them. Now, one of the ways you can do this is by using a chart. So if you would create what looks like a grid, and you are going to do time on the x-axis and outcomes on the y-axis. So you are looking for things that are low effort, high impact. Those are definitely the ones that you want to prioritize. Now, if it's lots of time and low impact, those are the ones that we're going to put at the very bottom of the list. Now, you might think this is a great practice for somebody who is visual because it lets you see all of the stuff that you're doing, but it lets you see it in a way that kind of makes sense according to this graph or this chart. You'll be able to plot all of the different projects you all have going on. Now, there are always exceptions. Just because something takes a lot of effort and it doesn't give you the best outcomes, we're not saying trash it or start over. We're just saying evaluate that and how people's time is being used in order to accomplish it. So, for example, if you have an annual event and it's your favorite event because you love events, maybe it's a gala and you're like, I just can't wait to get all dressed up. That's great. But if it took a ton of time to get ready for it and you only brought in $300, maybe evaluate things you could do with the gala a little bit differently. How can you market it better? How can you bring in more auction items? How can you extend yourself to more partners that can help get the word out, or that can help donate, or that can sell tickets? Maybe you need more activities at the gala, like maybe you need a wine and whiskey pull and a live auction and a silent auction and a paid photo booth and a cash auction. There's so many different ways you can make money. And if you're not getting all of those ways in, then that's what we mean. That took a lot of effort and it brought you back very little return. How can we make it better? Not let's scrap it. Okay, the next thing I want you to do around prioritization of tasks and projects is implement a task or project management system. So Asana, Trello, Monday. My favorite is MeisterTask. Now, also, this is just a little ping for the National Nonprofit Resource Library. If you go to Tech Tips, it's the very first resource listed there. We actually do a review of all of the top project management platforms and give our recommendations on them. But it doesn't matter which one you use at the end of the day. It's going to help you streamline your workflow and ensure transparency between what everybody on your team is working on. Now, the one caveat here is it only works if you have buy-in. So there's walking this fine line of we are putting too much in the project management system and it feels overwhelming, to we don't have anything in here and nobody knows who's working on what for how long. Now, if you use it correctly, like MeisterTask, I'll give my example. I love MeisterTask because one, it's free if you don't put a lot in there. I think they let you put like up to 3 major projects in there, and that's free. You can tag people on your team. You can add due dates and deadlines. You can move it through progress tracking. So it could be something that hasn't started yet, is in process, is ongoing, is completed. You can also add tasks to every major project. So if I have a major project like a gala, I can put all of the little tasks that need to happen inside of it and check them off as they're done. It's a fabulous tool and all of them work that way. It's just a matter of what do you think is most user-friendly, what integrates with other platforms you're going to be using, what is going to be something that you can get buy-in from your team on. If you're the only one who uses it, it's not going to do any justice for your organization. Okay, the third thing on prioritization and tasks of projects, establish clear goals. We want there to be very obvious objectives that need to help you maintain focus and direction of every single project you're working on. If you have a project and it does not contribute to the overarching goal or objective or mission or vision of your organization, drop it. Because as a nonprofit, one, you are held to a higher standard than for-profit organizations. So the idea that you can start branching off and doing new things is much more difficult than if you were a for-profit LLC, for example. So what we want you to do when you are using the public's money, these are mostly donated dollars, is we will make sure every dollar is going to what you said it was going to go to. So we need to make sure that you are working on projects that are completely aligned with your mission and your vision. Don't start to get creative. It's okay to have partnerships that complement the work that you're doing, but we don't want you to go outside of your boundaries of what you have committed to as a nonprofit organization. When it comes to technology and tools, it's important that you absolutely have a cloud-based technology solution, which I believe most of you do. We're talking about Google Workspace or Microsoft 365. Those are the two biggest ones. Hopefully you have one of those. We're not going to belabor this idea too much. If you don't have one, please get one. Google Workspace is free for nonprofits. It's going to help you keep Google Drive, all of your documents in one place, and Gmail so that you can have everybody with the same type of email at the end, and it's much easier to transition and add when you have people coming and going. We want you to use communication tools like Slack or Microsoft Teams. Now, only if it's absolutely necessary. I would discourage you to get a Slack account if you have 3 people on your team and you guys already use text. Slack is too much. It's adding one more barrier for people to be like, oh, brother, I have to learn one more thing. I'd rather not. I'm just not going to use it. And that's what we don't want to do. So it's kind of like you have to pick and choose your battles. What is worth training your team on and getting buy-in? Because you can't do it for every single thing. I were you, I would prioritize the project management tools over something like Slack. Slack sounds cool, but don't drink the Kool-Aid. It's probably not for most of our smaller nonprofits. Another one that I would pick my battle on would be a donor management system, which you should absolutely have at any size. If you are brand spanking new, get a donor management system now because it's going to save you time in the future. And of course, our people who have been around for 25, 30 years, I see some of y'all on here. I know you've got a donor management system, and I bet you live and die by it too, because that is what drives your organization. Without it, you almost couldn't exist. When it comes to CRMs, those are different than donor management systems. So your CRMs is more of your customer relation management. And so this is similar, but they do use different names. Some nonprofits, it's okay if you choose to merge them. You don't have to. You can keep them separate because sometimes the people you're serving are not the people you are asking money from. Sometimes it's the same group, but not always. So you want to use your donor management system for anybody that's giving you money, the people you do please and requests and asks for, your foundations, private grants, public grants, people who just donate to you through social media or friends and family. All of that is in donor management system. CRM are the people you serve. This is where you can track your demographics. You can figure out men, women, like gender, race. They can figure out location. You can figure out if, for example, you're working with people with disabilities, which disabilities? If you're working with multiple languages, which languages are you working with? Age ranges, are you working with infants, children, teens, adults, senior citizens? Whatever information is important to telling the story about the organization that you work with, we want to make sure that information is captured in a CRM. So if you don't have a lot of people or clients that you work with, HubSpot is probably what I would recommend to you. HubSpot is free, I believe, up to 1,000 people. It's something crazy. Like they let you put so much in there for free. And then if you do want to increase like some of the capacity of what it can do for you, slowly, incrementally adding different features, it allows you to do that piece by piece, like an a la carte, instead of feeling like you have to buy everything all at once. Another thing that I really love about it is because HubSpot is so wildly popular through corporate, nonprofits, everybody, it has some of the best integrations. So you can integrate it with almost any other platform or software that you are using. So I'd really recommend that one, but it might not be right for you. Still, you can do some research. You can go, like I had mentioned, into the resource library and see some of the research we've already done for you. All right, the next thing we're going to talk about is innovative staff utilization. So I've got 2 categories here, leveraging volunteers and interns, and then cross-training staff. When it comes to leveraging volunteers and interns, let's start with the volunteers. We want you to develop a really structured volunteer program. This means you have well-defined roles, responsibilities, maybe even training modules that you can put your volunteers through to ensure that they know exactly what it is they're expected to do and how we do it, what processes we use, what platforms we use. This is really important for several reasons. One, it is going to probably be somebody's first interaction with your organization because maybe they had to get community service hours, or maybe they're just looking for a way to give back and they haven't done so before. They heard about you, they want to come support the work that you're doing. and you want them to feel like they had a seamless engagement with you. If they come and it's real rocky and you're like, oh, who are you? What were you supposed to do? Who told you to do that? Have you checked in with so and so? Oh, you don't even know who they are. That's when they're like, you know what? Maybe I'd rather go to somewhere that's a little bit more polished or somewhere that I could know what to expect. I would like to go support a more reputable organization. So we do not want you to run your name into the ground by not knowing what to do with volunteers. I also know sometimes it can feel like babysitting if you do not prepare your staff for the volunteers that they're going to have to work with them. So get in front of that, be proactive, talk to your staff, ask them, what would you love to have a volunteer help you with? If you assume you know, they might be like, oh my gosh, I could have done it myself faster. That's probably one of the worst feelings for a staff member is I have to train a volunteer when I could have simply done it myself and it would have saved me time, headache, and hassle. So don't just give them people. Make sure everybody's on board with who's coming, when they're coming, and what it is they're supposed to be doing, how many hours they have with us, and do we have to do anything for them? Like at the end, are they expecting a recommendation letter? Do we need to sign off on a log every time they're here? Do we need photos with them so that they have proof that they did this work? But also find ways to capture them even beyond what they thought their initial engagement was. So, for example, if you have somebody coming to you through teen court and they have to get 15 community service hours, you make those the best 15 hours they've ever had. And then you ask them if you could interest them in sticking around for another 15. We could really use your help. You've been so valuable. We really appreciate everything you've done. Lay it on thick so that you almost obligate them to want to stick around more. But hopefully, they also want to in their heart because it was such a good experience. Now, one of the best ways you can get some interns is to partner with local universities and create these internship opportunities where you're going to give students practical experience while augmenting your workforce. Great things about interns, you can make them free. But from my experience, if you can afford to pay them anything, you will get a higher quality intern. If they know they've got any money on the line for this, they're more likely to make you a priority, not call in sick, not drop the ball because they feel like they have some skin in the game. So if you have it in your budget, I mean, $15 an hour, and they might be working 10 hours a week, that could be something that really helps a college student, but also really helps the work that you're doing as well. And so when you partner with these local universities, oftentimes what they're going to want from you, you can't just call them and be like, hey, you got some kids to send my way. You actually do need to have some type of internship program so that legally it is considered an internship. And what that means is that they have to be able to learn from somebody who's considered an expert in that arena. So you have to identify who on your team is going to be the intern's supervisor. Are they actually an expert in that area? It doesn't mean they have to have a degree in it or anything. It means that if the intern has questions, like in social media, for example, will this person know how to answer them? You can't have a social media intern if nobody on your team knows how to use social media. That would be in violation of the law. So come up with roles in which somebody on your team could answer questions, but they would be happy to pass it off to an intern. Social media is actually one of the most popular internship programs. And it's great because so many students are in marketing and so many students are significantly better at social media than any of us are. So if you can have somebody who, yeah, I set up the social media accounts, I know how to run an ad, I understand how to delete comments if I need to. If you know the basics, that's essentially all you really need to say, yes, I'm going to be the social media point of contact. I will be able to train the intern on how often we schedule, what type of content we post, how we delete content if we need to. And you can do that for them. Now, that's not the only reason you should have an intern or the only type of intern you should have. There's so much more. You could also have one for communications where they send out newsletters. You can also have a programming one where they plan programs, projects, and events for you. You could also have a community outreach one where maybe they're hosting community forums and town halls for you. You could think through any of the ways you would love to grow your program, but you haven't had the capacity to grow it yet. and you could put somebody who's going to college locally, loves their community, and wants to give back. It is such a win-win. Now, whenever you do determine what this looks like, you'll have to create a job description for it. And every university has its own intern portal. Now, a popular one is Handshake. The majority of the universities I work with are on Handshake, but then there are some one-off ones like Purple Briefcase, for example, which is what I think ACC uses in Austin. But there are a lot of other options available as well. Hire a Horn, I think, is a UT one maybe. But anyway, Handshake is once you create a profile, it'll say which one of these universities do you want to work with, and you can check the box for all of the universities in your area. And when you post a job, it's going to post it to all of their student portals. So Handshake is really great because it's the biggest bang for your buck. But let's say you specifically want to work with a university near you and they don't have Handshake. No problem. You go to their website, you see where you could have internships posted. Usually if you type in intern at XYZ college or university, it'll take you to that page and it'll say, are you looking to hire someone or are you looking for a job? Click the hire someone and then go through their enrollment process. The majority of these are free. Very rarely do I see any that require any sort of payment or fee. And then in addition to that, oftentimes once you post a job there, they're probably going to invite you to career fairs, which is a wonderful way, again, to get your name out into the community and to find people who are willing to work with you or volunteer with you at a career fair. You do not feel like you can only go to a career fair if you're hiring for full-time C-level positions at your organization. Go to a career fair to get some interns if you want. Now, some of the career fairs do cost money, but they tend to be pretty low. They're around $100 is what I'm seeing on average for having a booth or a table at a career fair. And you are going to get in front of literally thousands of people when you go. They're a little chaotic. They're a little overwhelming. It's an all-day event most of the time, and the students there are eager. They all want to talk to you. There will be long, long lines of people wanting to come talk to you. So I think those are really great partnership, especially if you are working with underserved populations. Partner with a local HBCU if there's one around you. Those are your historically black colleges and universities. And students there would probably also love to come support an organization that is serving a population that reflects them and their university. So we've had really great response rates working with Houston Tillotson out of Austin for a lot of our nonprofits in the Austin area. Specifically, I can speak to that one. I know there are a ton of HBCUs across the country though, and I think they would all love to hear from you. And then finally, recognize and reward volunteer contributions and maintain that motivation, maintain that engagement. I'm not going to spend too much time on that one because we literally have an entire resource for you in the resource library around volunteer recognition, so you keep them on your side. We should move on to cross-training staff. Now, this is important because you want to be able to never feel like you've been left high and dry. If a staff gets sick all of a sudden and they're out for 2 weeks, or if they have to go on a vacation, they just quit and they left you with nothing. So what you try to do is identify overlapping skills among staff, and you create these cross-training programs to help enhance flexibility in role assignments. So if I know so-and-so over here in finance does a really good job with accounts payable, accounts receivable, and payroll, but then I know somebody over here is my grant writer, and I see that there are some overlapping skills. I mean, we're talking about financials, we're talking about reporting on finances. I would love to get those two people to kind of shadow each other, take turns on different days. Hey, grant writer, I know today we don't really have a grant for you to write, so I want you to shadow our AP, AR, bookkeeper, accountant, financial officer, whatever you want to call them. Figure out what they're doing so that if they ever needed to be out, you could be their substitute, and then vice versa. So that's the idea behind cross-training staff. I would also love for you to have the opportunity to implement job rotation schedules to ensure staff could cover multiple roles during peak times or absences. So for example, one of the nonprofits that I work for or do work with, they have several programs throughout the year. Like we're talking about probably upwards of 70 programs a year. It's a lot. It's every single weekend, plus some during the week, plus a couple of retreats and things like that. There's one person who's responsible for getting all of the speakers and presenters at all of these programs. There's another person who's responsible for securing all of the venues for all of these programs. What we need to do is make sure those two people could do each other's jobs. And it's not because there is overlapping skill, but it is because without either one of those, these events would completely fall apart. And that's just two of the roles. There are, of course, people that are marketing these programs that without them, nobody would know the program exists. There are so many things like that within this one organization. And so every single person is an expert in what they do, but they also need to be a semi-expert in any one of these other roles. And they could even be like, oh, I hate that. I don't want to do that at all. That's my least favorite thing. It's okay. Could you do it in an emergency, though? We're not asking you to change jobs permanently. We're just saying, could you do it in an emergency? And then if you're a small enough organization, you're thinking, well, man, this doesn't apply to me at all. Like it's literally me. And then sometimes I get my friend to help me do stuff. That's okay because the goal is you're going to be able to scale one day. And we want to make sure that when you do, all of this applies to you. We also want you to encourage just these knowledge sharing sessions where staff can share expertise and learn from one another. Let's move on to collaborations and partnerships. So approaching potential partners and maintaining those partnerships are really what we want to focus in on here. We want to identify organizations with complementary missions and reach out with clear proposal outlining these mutual benefits. So that means that if, for example, I'm supporting, I think I actually gave this example to somebody yesterday. I have one client and they're on the call. They support individuals with basically ensuring that families with young children are receiving education at home that better prepares them to succeed in school. Now, they primarily focus on Latino families. I have another client that does similar work, except they focus on Black families once students hit the age of 7. They work with families from 7 to 17 and empowering mostly females, Black females specifically, but doing it through education and making sure parents are involved in what they do. This could be potentially a really great collaboration because you guys could work together to apply for grants that say we help take families from age 0 to 17 because we take the first group and then we hand it off to the next group, for example. And it would give you an opportunity to share some of your resources because what works best with families of one race could likely also be translated to families of another race. So it gives you the opportunity to start to brainstorm strategy and sharing resources. It also is going to help you be more competitive for additional grants, possibly. So not only are you having better optics in the community, but you're also positioning yourself better to earn money doing it. We want you to also utilize existing networks, but attend industry events, build connections, explore partnerships and opportunities with others. And then we also want you, whenever possible, co-host events or campaigns with other partners to maximize reach and resource. That means at some point during your scaling of your organization, rather than always feeling like you have to proactively find people and find organizations and get your name out there, instead be like, you know what? I'm ready to kind of turn the table here. I'm ready to invite people to do stuff with us instead of saying, hey, can you please do this for me? Can we please just say, hey, so-and-so organization over there, you know what we do. Are you wanting to come over and host an event together? You can share the resources that you have. And of course, tell your constituency, tell your clients, tell your people what we're doing and bring them with you. And so now you become this host or a co-host instead of always having to feel like you're the one asking for something. Now you're the one hosting something, and it's going to kind of elevate your organization. So I hope you have the opportunity to explore that strategy. I think that's a really good one, especially for those medium-sized nonprofits who feel like we've been established, we've been doing what we do for so long. How do we take it to the next level? Start hosting things, and not just things for your families that you already serve, but things that could potentially reach the families or clients of other organizations that complement what you do. When it comes to maintaining these partnerships, schedule regular check-ins with the partners to discuss ongoing projects, address any issues they might have, but then also plan for future collaborations. I make it a point to meet with every single one of my corporate partners. I'm talking corporate, nonprofit, not the nonprofit ones, but corporate partners. I make it a point to meet with them once a semester, is what I like to say, because we're going to meet in the fall, we're going to meet in the spring. Summer, we'll see what happens. But I want to meet with them once a semester. And I want to say, here's what I did for you. Here's what you did for me. Are there opportunities for us to take our partnership to the next level? I literally had this conversation on Monday with one of my corporate partners. And I said, I've got some new ideas to bring to the table. Would you consider letting me do X, Y, and Z? And they're like, oh, well, we've never had a partner ask that before. And I'm like, well, there's a first for everything. I'm ready to take our partnership to the next level. Are you willing to do that? And they said, you know what? That sounds great. Let us think on it and let's follow up in a week. So that's the type of checking in I want to see you do, not just send an email that says, hey, what a great semester. Wishing you guys the best summer. Hope you, and you leave it at that. Like, constantly get those gears turning. What can I do to take it to the next level? Because that's how you're going to scale your nonprofit. You don't scale a nonprofit, or any business for that matter, by doing things the way they've always been done. Now, if you're a small startup nonprofit, you don't have a way things have always been done. You're establishing what the way is. And that's great. Establish it. Once you've established yourself, that's when you start to get innovative with what the next steps can be. We also want to make sure that you document partnership agreements clearly so that it doesn't get lopsided, which can oftentimes happen, especially if you're a nonprofit and you have a for-profit. You don't want it to feel like we're constantly giving things away. Make sure you have clearly outlined what the obligations are for the for-profit as well. And I would encourage you, if again you're taking notes, make sure you star this one, the partnership agreement. You should be drafting it. One of the biggest pitfalls I see, and it even happens to me with agreements that I get into with others, they are waiting for me to send something over, even though they're the ones who approached me for something. Don't be that person. If you are approaching people for a partnership, you need to draft the agreement. And the reason why is because you can specifically put in there the things that you want. And when you have somebody already saying, yeah, I'm interested, let's do it, that's your opportunity. Don't sit back and take the easy road and say, oh, great, we'll wait for your agreement to come through, because they're not going to make it in your favor at all. They're going to make it in their favor. So if you approach somebody, you need to make sure it's in your favor. So you need to be the person who is drafting it. I just got a question. Thanks so much for popping it in the Q&A. Can you share a general agreement? I am absolutely happy to share an agreement. Nikki, would you mind, because I don't want to forget it, because I know we're still doing this webinar. When you log into the resource collaborative and that resource request form, it's so short. If you could just type in the resource request form that you would like this, I will make sure to get it in the development queue and we'll send it to you and everybody else afterwards. Thank you so much for asking for that. And then finally, celebrate those joint successes. Whenever you have a partnership with another organization, every little thing is worth celebrating. Recognize milestones, recognize that things are going well, even if it's not a big accomplishment. We're used to celebrating the big stuff, right? If you get a big grant, $50,000, whoa, we're so excited. But celebrate the small stuff. Hey, I just wanted to congratulate you. Did you notice we brought 3 more people into our organizations this week because of the newsletter we sent out and people clicked on it? That's incredible. Keep up the good work. We want to celebrate every little thing. One, it lets the partner that you're working with know that you see and value what they're bringing to the table. It also keeps you a priority. And then finally, it is building that ongoing relationship so that they feel like, I really like this person. I really like the work that they're doing. I want to keep this going. If you are out of sight, out of mind for 6 months, and then all of a sudden you're like, hey, can't wait to keep working with you next semester, they might be like, oh, thanks, but this isn't working. So we don't want you to be out of sight, out of mind. Okay, the last thing that I have to talk through with you guys, cost-effective and sustainable strategies. This is optimizing your existing staff's capabilities to ensure all of your team members are contributing effectively. So I have 4 points to talk through, and then we are done. If you all have additional questions, please do type them in the Q&A. I'm happy to answer your questions. The first thing, training staff and volunteers in social media and digital marketing. We already talked a little bit about the digital marketing, especially as it pertains to interns, but nonprofits can run incredibly effective campaigns without having to hire marketing professionals. You could do it with volunteers, you could do it with interns, you could actually do it with your staff who they might not be social media gurus. They don't have to be. There are some simple basics. Get a calendar and say, hey guys, our new goal is I want us to post 3 times a week. I want us to post every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I want the content, if you want to use this, if you're writing things down again, the 4 E's. Is it engaging, educational, entertainment, or evergreen? Those are the 4 E's when it comes to social media. If you feel like you're stuck on what to post, because you should not only be posting asks. Please do not have a social media page that is 100% give us money, make a donation. It's off-putting. You also want it to be relevant, though. You don't want to have a social media page in which it's just nonsense. Things aren't branded. It looks like you're reposting other people's stuff. If there's no cohesiveness to your page, you are going to not get as many followers or likes, which means the algorithm's going to put you at the bottom. Nobody's going to see the stuff that you do. So instead, come up with a quick calendar, open up a Google Doc calendar, identify the days you want to post, put one of those E's in each day, and then give it to your staff and say, for inspiration to get you started, this Wednesday, we need an educational post. Who wants to tackle that? Next Friday, I need somebody to give me an engagement post. Who wants to tackle that? And spread it out. Let each of your people contribute to it, and you'll have somebody to knock this out for you pretty simply. If I would also recommend, as long as we're talking social media, you need to be on 3 platforms at a minimum. I prefer Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. We are also on TikTok. We are also on X, which used to be Twitter. We do not have a Reddit presence. You don't have to. We do not have a Snapchat presence. I have no interest in that. I do not even want to be on all of these platforms, but I do understand that you need to meet people where they're at, and people are at different platforms, different times during the day, or because they're in a different generation, whatever the case may be. I want to meet all those people. So those are the 3 platforms we use. And then I want you to get a social media scheduler. I prefer, after all of the research I did, we do all of this research and you can find it in the resource library. We use Social Pilot. Social Pilot I have found to be the most cost-effective one that's out there. It allows us to make the post one time and then schedule it to go out on all of our channels, and we can schedule them months in advance. I literally had my intern tell me that all of our social media has been posted through November 17th for the National Nonprofit Collaborative as of yesterday. So we are posting everything far in advance, and because of that, it's one more thing off my plate that I have to worry about. All right, implementing budget-friendly marketing tactics. Let me make sure all the Q&As are answered. Okay, perfect. So implementing budget-friendly marketing tactics. This means using community engagement events, having online campaigns, whatever you can do to increase brand awareness about your organization. Make sure the community understands who you are and what you do. And it doesn't mean you always have to spend a ton of money doing it. Don't feel like every time you do something that's considered marketing, it's going to cost you thousands of dollars. Facebook campaigns can run as low as, I run them for like $50 for some of my clients for a 10-day campaign. You could also run, I think we just ran a TikTok campaign for $32 for 7 days. So social media campaigns can be really inexpensive and budget friendly. Don't do it for every single post. Do it for upcoming events or major donor days or something that you really want to get the word out on. Pay a little bit of money, anywhere from $25 to $100, and blast that post everywhere. If you want to do any in-person events, host it at your facility. Don't feel like you have to rent a venue. Maybe get some cheap pizza and do something to bring your community together. But again, it doesn't mean you have to give everybody free shirts and hats and mugs and things like that. Have a drawing, have one shirt and mug ready to go as a raffle prize, but do things to bring people in your door. Let them know what you need from them. And then we also want to train staff and donor communication techniques. This will enable them to take fundraising responsibilities off of your plate, which can be really crucial, especially in those smaller organizations. So, trained staff and donor communication techniques means we are just letting them know how to use that donor management software. That means they're logging it every time they email somebody or call somebody or see them at an event. It goes in the donor management software so that you can keep track of how many touch points you've had with each person. And we want to make sure that so you've got somebody, for example, that says, hey, I want you to be responsible for birthdays and anniversary of giving days. Can you please just make sure every week you send a card to the people who hit one of these criteria? That's a really easy way to get your staff to take some work off of your plate while still maintaining relationships with donors. And then finally, using low cost tools and platforms that can help you allocate more resources towards your core mission. So, low cost tools and platforms include many of the ones we've already spoken about. We're talking about Social Pilot, we're talking about Google Workspace. We also, some of the other ones that I like to use, Canva. Please know that if you don't have a Canva account, it's free for all nonprofits, and it is a total game changer. We also use Teachable to house our courses and to house the National Nonprofit Collaborative. So if you're thinking of creating a course, I would encourage you to look at Teachable for that. And if you have questions or want to know more about it, let me know. We've spoken about MeisterTask already. That's the project management software that I had mentioned. It's free up to a certain users and amount of content you put in there, which is wonderful. Make sure you have your Stripe account, you have your Square account. I also love to use Calendly, but you may have noticed that Google Calendar has a lot of the features Calendly has right now, all for free. So if you're not willing to spend money on Calendly, go explore Google Calendar and see how you can use many of the same features that you've seen in Calendly, absolutely free built in. Some of my favorite other ones that are extensions on Chrome, Sejda, Sejda. That is a free PDF editor. It allows you to merge PDFs, delete pages from PDFs, transfer or convert files from PDF to Word, all kinds of great stuff. So if you need something cheap or low cost, I do use the paid version myself, which is like, I want to say it's about $60 a year, but absolutely worth it. And then there's also a JPG compressor. And this allows you to compress files. If you've ever had issues with being able to upload something, it says you can't because it's too big. That's the name of the Chrome extension, but their website is imagecompressor.11zon.com. So I really love using that tool as well. At this point, I think that's all I really needed to share with everybody on the call. Again, I want to thank you all so much. I keep checking Q&A, make sure I didn't miss anything else. If you have a final question, please feel free to drop it in there or email me. Everybody in here has my direct email. I am always happy to be a resource for you. I really appreciate you spending your time, and I hope you have found this to be of great value. And be on the lookout for the invitation to our next webinar. And with that, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.